Most design tools give you a canvas, most AI tools give you code. CSS Studio gives you both at the same time, and the split is not 50-50. You draw, the agent codes. That distinction matters more than it sounds. Here is what actually happens. You open CSS Studio and you start placing elements visually. You drag a box, resize it, set padding with your mouse, pick a color from a palette, normal stuff. But underneath, an AI agent is watching every single move and writing production-grade CSS in real time. Not a suggestion, not a snippet. Actual deployable code that reflects exactly what you just did with your hands. The workflow flips the script on every AI design tool you have seen before. Tools like Figma or Webflow let you design visually, but require manual CSS export or messy translation layers. AI code generators like GitHub Copilot or Visual by Versal start from text prompts, which means you are describing a visual outcome in words, an inherently awkward process. CSS Studio removes that awkward middle step entirely. You think visually, you work visually. The code just appears. Let me show you a concrete example. Say you are building a card component. You drop a container, set a border radius, add a shadow, nest a headline and a button inside. Every interaction, every nudge of a slider, every color picker selection maps directly to a CSS property in the output panel. The agent does not guess what you mean. It translates what you did. That is a meaningful difference. But here is the thing. This is not magic. And CSS Studio does not pretend it is. There are real limits you need to know about before you commit to it. First, it does not generate full HTML structure from scratch. You are working with CS, not a full component builder. If you need semantic HTML, accessibility attributes, or JavaScript interactions, you are on your own. The tool handles styling and styling only. Second, complex responsive breakpoints are still mostly manual. The agent writes great static CSS, but multi-breakpoint responsive behavior requires you to define each state yourself. Third, the output is vanilla CSS, no Tailwind, no CSS modules, no SCSS. If your project runs on a utility-first framework, you will need to adapt or convert the output. That is extra friction. What surprised me was how clean the code actually is. No bloat, no inline overrides fighting each other, no specificity wars. The agent writes CSS in the way a careful senior developer would. Structured, readable, minimal. That alone puts it above most visual-to-code exporters I have tested. Now, where does this realistically go from here? A few directions that are plausible, not wishful. The most obvious next step is component library integration. If CSS Studio could output Tailwind classes, or map to a design token system, it would slot into existing professional workflows without friction. That bridge does not exist yet, but it is not a hard one to build. Another realistic direction is version diffing, showing you exactly what changed in the CSS when you make a visual edit. That kind of transparency would make it genuinely useful for design handoff in teams. And if the agent learned your project's existing CSS patterns, it could start enforcing consistency automatically. Right now, it writes clean code. Soon, it could write your code. So why does CSS Studio exist? Because there is a real and persistent gap in the design-to-code pipeline. Designers think visually. Developers think in code. Every tool in between forces one side to speak the other's language. That creates translation errors, slow handoffs, and frustration on both sides. CSS Studio bets that the right architecture is not AI replacing the designer or the developer. It is AI sitting exactly at the boundary between them, doing the translation silently so both sides can stay in their natural mode. That is a solvable problem. And the approach here is honest about what it is. A precision tool for a specific moment in the workflow, not a full stack replacement for anything. If you are a front-end developer who hates context switching between Figma and your editor, this is worth an hour of your time. If you are a designer who wants to hand off real CSS instead of specs, this is worth an hour of your time. If you need a full design system builder or a responsive layout engine, keep looking. Next episode, we are looking at a tool that does the opposite. It reads existing production code and generates the design documentation automatically. No design file required. Subscribe so you do not miss it.